Do you hate the planning cycle? I've heard so many business owners time and time again be frustrated and dislike the planning cycle. This fear of your plan being outdated by February is a real fear. So, business owners everywhere that I'm talking to are trying to ditch this annual cycle. But what if the planning isn't the problem? Most business plans die in a Google Drive. By the time they're finished, the world has already changed. We spend weeks planning and then everyone goes back to business as usual. It's not that the plan doesn't work, it's that our planning habits are broken. The typical plan looks like this: it's built once a year and then forgotten. It's focused on precision and it's not adaptable. It's created by leaders, not owned by teams. And it's rewarding guessing over adjusting. So people ditch these plans because they feel irrelevant and they give up on planning. They think they're now being agile and they're going to be a business that can react more quickly. But the absence of a plan results in drift. And today, we're going to help you fix all of these planning problems. What if instead of planning being a once a year event, we turned into an annual rhythm that we go through? Last week, I talked about the 3 business cycles. You can watch that video up above. We talked about the planning cycle and what that potentially looks like, the growth cycle, and the operating cycle. We talked about how these cycles can move concurrent or independent of each other, about what the goal of each of these cycles is. As we move through the cycles, we're always adjusting, aligning, and improving. And I think the problem with the planning cycle is that people view it as just an event that happens and then we go about our business. But planning needs to be central to everything you do in the business. So today we're going to talk about the planning cycle, what it looks like, and how to use it to create clarity in your business. Because again, without it, you're often running blind. So the 3 goals of the planning cycle, as I see it, are: 1, we want direction. 2, we want it to give us clarity of focus. And then 3, we want it to help us establish a cadence to ensure that we stay on track. And I think this is so often what's missed when people go through the planning cycle. So we're going to view all these through the lens of the cadence that we're establishing. And we're going to establish 4 different cadences. One of these is one that you could argue crosses over with the operating cycle. We're going to talk about the annual reset, the thing that you do on an annual rhythm that you're used to, what it should look like, and then how it feeds in to these other 3 cycles. Second, we're going to talk about quarterly realignment. Third, we're going to talk about a monthly review. And then fourth, we're going to talk about a weekly huddle. Let's start with the annual reset. This is where we step back, realign vision, strategy, and numbers. We define our 5-year, maybe even 10-year vision of where we see ourselves going into the future. This is not just business, but this is also personal. And we need to be very clear that as we go through this, that we understand where we're going in the long term. Once we understand where we're going in the long term, we can back that into what do we need to accomplish today to make that long term possible. Once we do that, we're going to determine what are the priorities, right? So we may have 10 different things that we need to get to, but if we focus on 10 things, we get no things done. And so we want to then go into what our priorities are with that. Again, this is where people miss, is once they've done that 1-year plan, they leave it, wipe their hands clean, and they move on down the road. They don't establish a scoring system that helps them be accountable to the plan. So we're going to establish our priorities. We're going to budget. We're going to forecast out into the future. This is going to give us a point of truth. And then we're going to back into from that point of truth the things that we're going to do to keep score. This is your anchor, your map for the road ahead. This score system is going to give you something to look back on, to know what the source of truth of what you thought ideal was in that moment. We're really good at lying to ourselves. So when we don't establish this, we can convince ourselves halfway through the year we're on track or we're off track, when in reality, we're just lying to ourselves about what we thought back in the fall of the previous year. Today, we're not going to go through all of these processes. I have some videos coming over the next few weeks where we're going to talk through the whole annual planning process. So as we get to the end of the fourth quarter and do the planning for 2026, be watching for those, subscribe so you don't miss them. And we're going to walk through it step by step and what each piece of the process looks like. Next, we have the quarterly realignment. This is a 90-day schedule that we follow to pause and reorient ourselves to what the annual plan was. It's so easy as you get into the busyness of what goes on in a business every single day, every single week, every single month, that we don't pause and take a step back. The goal of this quarterly realignment is that we actually do the pause, that we actually take a step away from our day to day, get out of the office, maybe even take a day off, maybe even remove everything from your calendar, go do something active, and then come to an office and sit and be out of your normal environment. But this is key to making sure that the forward progress happens. We want to review our progress, where we were at the beginning of the quarter, where we are now. We want to answer truthfully. Did we achieve the things we wanted to achieve? If we didn't, why didn't we? Assess ourselves. We want to then reforecast what we know based off of everything that has changed within the business. What's true now? What's a more realistic goal for the rest of the year? And then we want to recommit to our top 2 to 3 initiatives. Sometimes you'll even swap one of those out. Maybe something changed in the business and we need to reassess where our focus is going. And that's good. That's part of the process. This allows you midstream to look at things and say, if I had these 3 priorities at the top of the quarter, and now this other thing seems rather urgent, can we assess this new thing against those 3, or against the 3 that are upcoming, and what is most important out of those? By having the plan, we force ourselves not to just chase the latest squirrel that's coming down the pipeline, not to just chase the new and shiny thing, but actually assess, if we move one out and a new one in, are we still going to be able to meet our annual goal or a long-term vision? This is one of the key things that takes the previous process, where you have a static plan that doesn't change, that doesn't keep up with the business, and makes it a process that we can now flex and move with the business. Inherent in this also is we don't make changes midstream unless something crazy happens, unless a COVID happens, unless some natural disaster happens, something crazy that completely changes the whole landscape in a way that could not have been anticipated. If that happens, sure, we punt some things, but this forces that if those ideas come, you don't immediately chase them. You pause and hold them towards that quarterly process. Once we do a good job with that quarterly process, we can now go into that monthly review. You should be sitting down and reviewing your monthly financials on a regular basis. You should sit down and create some dedicated time for that. And now, as we do this monthly review, we're going to add in and have those KPIs from your annual plan as a part of your monthly review process. We're not making the big changes here that we can make in the quarterly process, but we're assessing where should we be, where are we actually, and do we need to make adjustments in our approach? This isn't flipping out priorities, but this is saying, if we said we're going to be up 100,000 in revenue and we're only up 50, do we need to change some of the actions that are going to help us catch up or not? This gives us a chance to fine tune, to see stuff in motion, in movement, and not only know at the end of a quarter that we missed after the quarter's over and after we can't make those changes anymore. This allows us to make midstream changes and adjustments to make meeting our quarterly objectives, annual objectives, to make it all much more likely that we actually achieve our goals. And then the last piece is the weekly huddle. This is the part you could argue is part of the operational cycle, and we're going to talk about it more in depth at the operational cycle. So we'll save that for the coming weeks. But this weekly huddle makes sure that we as a team stay on track. So you're likely already doing some sort of version of this where you and your team are meeting together and talking about what's coming up, what are we working on, what does it look like. The key here is we just want to make sure that we implement the items from our annual plan, that they're getting visited and updated here as well. So we're going to review potentially the KPIs. We're going to discuss where we're being blocked. We're going to reaffirm those priorities. We're going to ask what's working, where are we stuck, what has changed. And we're just going to repeat this every single week, right? We can typically, even before the monthly cadence, tell that we're maybe getting off track. Give us a chance to, on that weekly cadence, think about how can we catch up. A great plan won't save you, but a culture that lives within the plan will. So we need to be very intentional about setting up a culture in the business that is a planning culture that embraces this process. Too often you get into a business and there isn't a planning culture. And when there's no planning culture within that business, you typically do the plan, never revisit it. Then the next year when you do the plan again, people put less effort into it. And so then you get a bad plan and then you get further and further off track. This is where that drift happens. And we need to get the whole team bought in. When the whole team is bought in, clarity never fades. You need more than just the business owner pushing this plan, and creating that culture is key. So we want shared ownership in the plan. We want to make sure people have different parts of the plan and that they're incentivized to move the plan forward. We want to have transparent accountability. Even you as the owner can be held accountable to not reaching the goals that you've set. We want to have continuous reflection. We want to build this into our monthly cadences. Are we on track? Include those people in the quarterly realignment. And we want to make sure that those goals are connected. If we do all of those things, that culture of accountability and that culture of planning is going to lead to us being more successful in the long term. When planning becomes a part of the company's rhythms, chaos turns into clarity. You move faster, adapt smarter, and grow stronger. Planning isn't about predicting the future. Planning is about you making a bet on a future that you want and then revisiting that bet on a regular basis to make sure that you have the highest chance of achieving that goal, because we're all about helping you achieve those goals here. It's about being ready. It's about being proactive. I hope that this was helpful for you. If you feel like there's still some uncertainty, I'd love for if you comment down below, ask any questions you may have. We're going to be doing a series talking about the cycles of business. So we still have the operating and growth cycle to come. We're going to be then talking more in depth about the annual planning process. So be looking for that. So your questions can help us shape some of that content as we continue to produce that. Thank you for watching, and I hope that you'll subscribe so you see the rest of the content that is coming in this series, and hope you have a great